Hello and welcome to the Vector Garden. In this video we are going to talk about stock artwork in Affinity Designer. So I have researched some vector stock files and we're going to load them in Affinity Designer and check out what works and what doesn't. It's very popular to start by using stock vector art, and most of it is offered as EPS files, and EPS, well, that's a universal vector file format, right? Let's check that out. I have downloaded files from Freepik and Vecteezy, free vector files of different kinds of artwork, and we're going to check some of them out. So, first, I have two files from Freepik. It's this one and this one. I have already downloaded it and we're going to open it in Affinity Designer. It's this version 2.5.3. I have just updated it, so it's the most current version that is available today. And let's check out the files. So, here's my downloaded folder and there are the files. So let's first check out this one. It's this one. This is the JPEG. The EPS is not supported on Mac OS anymore, so I don't have a preview for that. So that's why I use the JPEG. But I'm using the EPS and just drag it over the Affinity Designer icon like this. And then we have that file. So to check whether this is usable, just go to the outline view and then you see the paths, and this looks reasonable. So there are no additional elements, there are not too many elements, nothing is split into separate paths or the like, so this looks nice. Let's also check out the layers panel and then we can look into it, and you see we all have curves in here. So it's not grouped, but that's nothing too complicated to select them, the items, and group them and then use that to your delight. Let's close this one and let's check out the next one. So that is this one, and it looks quite simple as well. So let's take this EPS, open it in Affinity Designer, there it is, and this looks simple, right? So first of all, I'm going into the wireframe mode, and we see there are some rectangles in here that shouldn't be there. So these, where do they come from? So what's that? Let's go into the layers panel, and there we have a lot of curves because the text has been outlined, which is a requirement. But then in here we have some weird stuff. We have images used as masks on those shapes. So that is something that didn't work in the EPS, so it had to be expanded when this was exported. And most probably this has been transparency, because EPS does not support transparency. So that's what happened here, and we see a lot of them. So this is less usable. In order to use that, you might need to recreate some of that, or you might just need to be very careful when scaling that, because there are images in it and then you are resolution dependent. So you have to watch out for the size of the artwork and make sure you stay within the limits of what is printable. The next ones are from Vecteezy, so it's this file here. And we have another one. I have also used that one. And we're going to take a look at this one. These are very popular. because they are complicated to create if you don't know where to start. And there are a lot of elements in them, and they are quite spectacular. So they are popular as download files. And let's take them. So let's start with this one. And you see there is this checkered background which suggests that you can take this and put it onto a different background in order to have this as an effect in your file. So there is the EPS, and we're going to take it into Affinity Designer. There it is. And this looks, well, quite normal. But let's first go into the wireframe view, and what is that? So we can also move this apart. So what's happened here? Let's go into the Layers panel, and you see images. Images, images, images. There's no vector element in this one. So in Affinity Designer, you cannot use this. You can't even separate it from the background. It's just not usable. I'm not going to save it. And let's take a look at the next one. So we're going to look at this one here. Let's take this and put this into Affinity Designer. And there it is. And you see, this is kind of weird as well, how this behaves. And we see these slight oval shapes in here, which looks quite different from that preview. So what has happened here? Again, we are looking at the results of transparency, which has been flattened. So there are some shapes left, but still we have these weird shapes in there, and we have a lot of masking in here. Now, this image is large enough so that you can use it. If you take a look at that, let's also change this to millimeters for the folks who do not work with points. So it's quite large. If you just need it in this way and do not need to change it in any way, then, well, just go ahead. Maybe it would be better to not use the EPS in that case, but use the JPEG instead. Let's take a look at the last one, this one here. There we have it. And this is the file. And again, you see just pixels. There are no paths in here. Now, maybe you have just switched to Affinity Designer from Illustrator, and in Illustrator this was quite different. Why do these files work in Illustrator but not in Affinity Designer? Let's take a look at those problem files in Illustrator. So I'm going to start with this EPS here, and let's open that in Illustrator. There are some fonts missing, and first of all we are going into Outline View, and you see there are no rectangles in here, so obviously nothing has been converted to pixels. But what caused this? And we see in here, when we select this one, there is transparency in that gradient. And EPS is so ancient, it doesn't support transparency, it will flatten it, and that's where all these pixels come from. And the same goes for a lot of other stuff in this file. But this was the same EPS that I opened in Affinity Designer. So why does that open differently in Illustrator? And that is something that is very unique to Illustrator. Let's go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save that into my folder as an EPS. And then we are going to look at this one here. And you see we have all these formats here. And these versions are what the stock companies ask for. They want their files to be saved as Illustrator 10 EPS. And what this does is it saves an EPS. So there is no EPS version 10. There's only an EPS version 3, which is the one down here. And that Illustrator 10 comes from a second file that gets embedded in the EPS. So when you save that, what Illustrator does is it saves an EPS. That is version 3. That is the part of the file that is interchangeable between the applications that can open EPS at all. But inside of that EPS is also an Illustrator file. So an AI file is embedded in the EPS. And when you open that EPS in Illustrator, then actually Illustrator does not open that EPS. It sees the AI file, and that's the one it opens. Affinity Designer cannot open Illustrator files. It can only open the EPS. It can also open PDFs, but in this case it opens the EPS, and there's not a lot left of the original file. So let's take a look at these others. We've got this one, and I want to take a look at that one. So let's take these two and also open them in Illustrator. Let's zoom out here, and you see this is what we get. And there are the paths. So I'm going into outline view, and you see there are all the paths, and this is the checkered background. And in Illustrator, we can go into the layers panel, and we can go into this here. We have a clip group, and all we need to do is locate this checkered background and turn it off. So there are quite some elements that make it. And also let's take a look at the transparency grid is hidden, so this one needs to be hidden as well. And then we can put something else behind that, and this will show through. So just so you know that these black circles will vanish, let's just go to the symbols panel, and let's take a look at a symbol here. So just take this one, and I'm going to enlarge that like this, and then let's move that symbol down here. So now it's below the artwork, and then you see this is what's happening, and we get this light effect on top of our other image, and the circles vanish because of the transparency blend mode that is applied to them. And again, this causes that flattening. Let's take a look at the next one here. And let's take a look at where those circles came from. They are actually inside the artwork. So there we have this circle, and you see there's a gradient applied. So let's go into the gradient panel. Here we have a gradient, and that gradient again has a blend mode applied, which makes this nice light effect, but which also causes the transparency flattening. And again, Illustrator opened actually that AI file that is embedded in the EPS, and Affinity Designer can't. So what can you now do? If you want this kind of file as a stock vector art, then as an Affinity Designer user, your only chance is to search for Affinity Designer source files, because that's the only thing that you can actually use. Or you can only use the JPEG version of that file in case you do not need to edit it. What will work is just simple shapes that do not have transparency applied. You can use that as clip art.